Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Anthropology 1140, Introduction to Cultural Anthropology. It's the 30th of October. It's Wednesday of week 11. We're down here in environmental anthropology, and we're going to be talking about ecological footprint today and working on your homework number 7, which is looking at ecological footprint and having you calculate that. So, working on that today. Remember, you also have quiz number 7 due this week, and there's only 10 of each, so only 3 more homeworks and quizzes left throughout the semester. We're almost there. So if you're falling behind, make sure that you turn stuff in and get caught up. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about different types of environmental understandings on Monday, right? The different ways that people around the world believe or think about the environment. Today, we're going to talk more on the how people live in the environment, or how they actually impact it, right? As anthropologists, we're interested in both belief and practice, right? You can believe, you can say, do you believe in ghosts? No, I don't believe in ghosts. But in practice, maybe I still do, I cross myself every time I cross a graveyard or something like that, right? Like I can still have practices that are different from beliefs. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start looking at how some of our everyday choices impact the way that we live in an environment. Because like we talked about last time, people's relationship with the environment are both culturally and socially situated, right? That we create environments with these cultural landscapes or artifactual landscapes in which what we do, whether we build roads or cut down forests or build cities and towns, right? It's going to change the environment around us, but that also the environment impacts how we live, right? If you live in a coastal community, probably you're going to get a lot more fish in your diet than if you live in Portales, New Mexico. If you live in the desert and there's no rain, it might be harder for you to have agriculture, and you might be more of a pastoralist or something like that. And while anthropologists have studied kind of small scale societies and looking at how they live in their environment, it's often really easy. Like you're a hunter and gatherer population. Of course, you are shaped by your environment or transforming your environment as you hunt those animals. Originally, like anthropologists weren't as interested in modern society, but since like the 1970s and the beginning of like the environmental movement in the United States, there's been this push to like turn the lens of anthropology not just on those people far away, but turn it back on us in American society and see how environment impacts us, and especially how we impact the environment. Right, this is kind of a time of growing environmental concern, like whether it's 3 Mile Island or Silent Spring, right? These kind of watersheds in the environmental movement started to draw attention to the fact that people were harming their environment at an ever increasing rate, whether it was deforestation, people cutting down a lot of trees to make timber and paper, or global warming from people burning too much coal, or hunting animals to extinction. By like the end of the 20th century, it became clear that people were having a major impact on the environment, and that this was something that anthropologists should study as well, right? Not just small scale societies. So we're kind of thinking today about kind of the way that environmental challenges, right, are not just something out there happening in nature, but are part of this complex interplay between both natural forces as well as kind of social and cultural, and especially political and economic forces as well, right? The reason that all the bison were hunted to extinction was not just almost to extinction in the 1860s, was not like a natural phenomenon, right? But was this complex interaction between like westward expansion in the United States and the United States government's fight against Native Americans and trying to remove their subsistence, and then markets for buffalo hides economically, right? There's all these other factors going into what seems, on the surface to be just kind of ecological or environmental change. So what we're going to do today is kind of think about how we consume natural resources, as well as who pays for that, right? One of the things when we talk about like humans use this many resources, or humans around the world, we've used this many tons of coal this year, or this many animals or this have gone extinct, or this much land has been deforested. Oftentimes it's not really comparable between every person in the planet. Certain people have more impact than others. What kind of people or what kind of groups do you think impact the environment more than other people? Do you think rich people or poor people? Why? More power, right? More power, more influence, more resources, more availability. And this can be rich on like, yeah, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they probably do a lot more environmental damage because they're flying around in their private jets, going to a lunch in Paris and then flying to Tokyo for a concert, right? But also kind of on this global scale of like nationality, right? That people, relatively rich countries, people in those countries tend to use more resources than poorer countries, right? Even if poorer countries have more people, and oftentimes, like India is a great example, while it is a pretty large ecological footprint, there's a lot of people. And so each individual person is using a whole lot less, like 1/8 of the resources that maybe we use per person in the United States. And again, we can think about this not only on national level, but within a country too, right? Like if you are pretty poor and you are, riding your bike to work, you're going to have less impact than if I fly on my private jet or even drive my car to work. We can actually calculate this not just on, we can do this on a national level. And if you take my human geography class next semester, we'll talk about this and we'll do maps which show like which countries use the most coal and which countries use the most nuclear and fossil fuels and things like that and compare them. But we can also look at it on a personal level using a device or a test called the ecological footprint. Anyone ever heard of this before? This is a calculation of how much resources you as a person use in a year is usually how it's calculated. It can also be calculated in terms of how many resources the earth can provide you in a year and how much of that you would use or when you would use up a year's worth of resources by April or May if I wouldn't make it through the full year. So we're going to look at a couple of things about the ecological footprint, and I have some papers I'm going to hand out in a second, and we're going to work on this in class for the rest of the time today. So the ecological footprint is a quantitative tool, right? What's quantitative? Numbers, right? We're going to play around with some numbers that measures what people consume and waste when they produce. It calculates the amount of biologically productive land and water needed to support a person. And you're going to get a calculation at the end that will tell you something like, if everyone in the world lived like you would, we would use this much resources, right? And oftentimes this is calculated in terms of hectares that you would need. Or I think the test that we're going to take today, I keep changing the version because they change it or take it offline. I find a new one, is in how many earths that you would use, right? So if everyone lived like you do, if it's more, if say for instance, it's 2.3 earths, what does that tell us? If everyone on the planet lived like we do, and it would take 2.5 Earths to supply all the resources we need, what does that tell us about the way that we're living? Yeah, we're living unsustainably, like we're living beyond our means. It's like if you had a budget and you were like, I spend $1,000 a month, but I only make $500, right? You're living beyond your means. What kind of factors do you think would go into calculating your ecological footprint? What kind of things would make are kinds of resources that we might use over the course of a year? Some things that we do that use natural resources. Yeah, things that we do or things that we own or things that we driving, right? Transportation. That's one of the categories that you're going to see on here. And it's going to ask you questions about like, how much did you drive last year? How much did you fly? How much did you ride a bike? Did you take public transport? Right? So transportation is a big factor. What other things might be on there? How much water we use, right? Do you have like a low toilet or a low shower, or on the flush? How you heat your house, right? Whether you're on like a heat pump or you have like a wood burning stove or something like that, might make a difference. And also kind of broadly, just electricity. Do you have electricity in your house? Something might be like everyone's electricity. That was 2 years ago, electricity. kind of intense. And I bought a solar panel and I put it on top of my house. And then I have electricity. It's amazing. What else might we talk about? Electricity, we've got transport, food, yeah. How might food impact our? Do you think certain people have different ecological food budgets, not just monetary budgets? How might what you eat impact your ecological budget?
Based on what's present and what you're eating.
Right, what's present, especially in your local environment. Are you buying kiwis from New Zealand, which are flown across the world on an airplane to get to you? Or are you eating locally grown food from the farmer's market? Also, are you eating mostly plants or animals? Why might that make a difference?
In our
CO2, right, from the cows or from burning, is what you're saying?
Just keeping our balance.
In the balance, right? Cows and stuff, are higher level animals than plants. If you're only eating plants, you're eating the plants directly versus if you're eating the animals, right? They have to grow all that grain and then process it and then move it to the feedlot and get all that water and process it in order to produce the cow that you're going to eat for a hamburger. So what we're going to do next is you're going to have some time to play around with this calculation. Everyone has a laptop, it looks like, or at least a phone. So I handed you out this homework that we're going to work through today. In our discussion of sustainable development, we talked about how different indicators can be used to measure sustainability. One of the most important is your ecological footprint, an estimate about the land and ocean area required to sustain your consumption patterns and absorb your waste on an annual basis. The ecological footprint quantifies the area of biologically productive land and water used to supply human resource needs, including crops, fish, meat, forest products, energy, and built up lands, and to some extent absorb its waste. There's a whole bunch of different calculators out there, some more complex than others. Try to find one that was pretty accessible to you. In the simplest terms, a population's activities are clearly unsustainable if the size of the footprint excels the exceeded available area of ecologically productive land and water. Importantly, the ecological footprint analysis indicates which activities generate the greatest demand of Earth's biocapacity. Actually, I'm going to start with showing you a video about, let me do this first. So first, what you want to do is read part A. I'll just go over the whole assignment first. I'll show you the video. Read part A and click on this link, and it's going to take you to this web page, this green one right here. Read this page. It's not super long. It tells you, it's a little background on your ecological footprint. It tells you what kind of activities are involved, some types of environmental stress that are not captured by your footprint, and what does the current size of human global ecological footprint imply about the sustainability of current social activities. So you read that, and then you'll answer those questions. That's pretty easy. Then for part 2, you're going to click on this button, footprintcalculator.org. And you're going to take this test. There, and you take it. How often do you purchase animal-based products? Never, occasionally, very often. Anytime it shows you this add details to improve accuracy, you should click on it because it's going to give you a more detailed, right? Because you're like, well, pork, I don't eat pork ever. I don't eat pork, but I eat beef all the time, right? Because these are going to be really different depending on which one you pick. Go through the activity. At the end, it'll tell you your Earth. Your ecological footprint expressed in Earth. Which are the standardized units which take into account the differences in biological productivity of different various ecosystems. Calculate your footprint using ecological footprint. How many Earths is your footprint? Also, it tells you what your Earth overshoot day is. What's the day of the year where you would use more resources than the Earth can provide for the year, right? So what is the Earth overshoot day and what is your personal day? And then in part C, it gave you 6 questions. It asks you to go back to the beginning of the test after you've already taken it and change some things around, right? The first one is changing your transportation around a little bit, taking certain things all the way up and certain things all the way down. Second one's about diet. Third one's also about diet. Fourth one is about your house. Fifth one is about electricity. And then sixth one, you're just try some different things and see what you can do to increase or to decrease your footprint, which categories are the most productive in terms of reducing your footprint, and which ones don't make a big difference. And then finally, what are you most surprised at? So I'm going to show you this video of some people taking this very same test It's the exact same website that you took, just so you can kind of see what the test is like before you get started, and you can kind of get a feel for how you might fit in with the larger population of the United States in terms of how many Earths these people are using, and then how many Earths you're going to be using. So I'm going to start this, and we'll come back to it in a second.